This is episode 15 of What's Been Better. This week, we're talking about race. It's a sensitive topic that has to be discussed no matter your level of comfort. We can't move forward without looking back.
This is Tori Allen, Lori's daughter. For those of you who abstain from the joys of cursing, a little heads up, they curse in this episode, so be ready.
Okay, so today we are joined by our very first guest ever. I'm excited. Lori's daughter, Tori, is with us, and she is joining us all the way from Spain. Welcome, 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 welcome.
Welcome, Tori.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yay, we're happy to have you on our little big show.
Exactly.
Love it.
So let's get in it.
Okay.
Tori, what's been better?
What's been better? I would say my objectives in life are becoming clearer, and that is an amazing feat for me. So that has been better, and I've really just been enjoying like the end of my time here. So that is like the epitome of what's been better for me.
Lovely. What about you, Sylvia? What's been better?
After our crying, long knockdown, drag out session the other day, I have been making peace with some things, and Tori suggested a very interesting book that I'm hoping that we talk about later. Reforming Your Inner Mean Girl, and it has been eye-opening, and it's another like level unlocked of this journey to find peace. So it's just been interesting is what I can say. The last 48 hours have been very, very interesting. So
wow. Well, hopefully that's been better though. Although it's been interesting.
I didn't think it was at first. I mean, you were there, so you know. It was a very rough and jagged pill to swallow. But I have hope in my heart and a clearer mind, and I know that things will be okay, and that for sure, I will be okay. Which is not something that I would have been able to say before. So,
and then I will have to say that's awesome. yes, that's awesome.
Yes. So what's been better for you, Lori?
Well, I'm learning to bless people more instead of being bothered by the things that people do. And I'm always listening to books on Audible or reading actually whenever I can and I have time. But I just read a book called The Game of Life and How to Play It. I think it's an awesome book, so I recommend it. And
write that down.
Yes, whenever you're bothered with someone or someone is doing something that you don't necessarily approve of, the suggestion is to bless them or just give them grace instead of being annoyed. And I found that to be even more peaceful than I can imagine.
Okay.
So that's been better for me.
Add that to my list. We have to do a whole show on just like books again. Like
I think so. That
or things that we're reading.
I will definitely be back for that episode.
Okay.
Yay.
Sounds good. Well, there we go, guys. We'll have a whole nother episode with the three of us. So, well, let's jump into this topic because, like I said, this is a sensitive topic, but it's a topic that has to be talked about. And I think we definitely have some different perspectives at this little round table here. But yeah, I'm going to start with this. What is y'all's perspective on race in general? Like just the word, when you hear the word race, like what's your perspective on it?
Well, Tori, you want to jump in there?
So to that specific question, are you saying like when I think race, like what is my definition of race?
In a way, yeah. Or how do you feel about it just in general?
My definition of race, I guess, would be like what people are classified under. I can't I don't know. Yeah, something. It's a label that people are classified under, that represents either how they look or where their bloodline is from. And how I feel about it, um, I'm actually kind of very fond of it. Like I like the I like the groups and the subgroups and how they all play into one. Um, yeah, I love like the different things that bring us together. Like I have a lot of things. I have a lot of like random niches. I'm about to connect a couple things that may not be connected in other people's minds.
Okay.
But like I like the Divergent series and how each like category, like they had their own niche. It was really
Yes.
cool. I like the Hunger Games and how each unit division had their own like thing that they brought to the table. So I like all the culture. I like Zodiac and how all the different Zodiacs have a different personality. And like ultimately, if you're studying Zodiac, it's like ultimately you have all 12 of them in you at some point. It's just you might be identifying more with one, but they all like bring together different things. So I appreciate race for like highlighting differences because it also can show like the spectrums of like a rainbow for me. That's how I feel about race. Although it definitely can be a hindrance to some people and used as a weapon. I ultimately love the variety of it.
I agree with that.
I love that.
I wasn't sure how we were going to get into this or where we were going this or who I was going to agree with or disagree with, but like, okay, sidebar. Lori, when you are making jokes in our group text, because yes, listeners, we have a group text with the three of us, and you're saying that Tori and I are very alike, I get it now. Because I feel like you get me. Because if you just brought up the Divergent series and the Hunger Games series, holy cow. I just needed the trifecta to show up. If you would have said either Game of Thrones or Harry Potter, it would have been over with. Like my head would have exploded probably, but
oh, and the different houses. Oh my god.
Okay.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm over here like
what are they talking about?
Yes. No, I'm there treading, because Tori brings me into these different storylines, and I love that because had she not, I wouldn't know what the hell y'all talking about at all. So.
I need you to know that she has seen episodes of Game of Thrones, and if you talk about some characters, she will be able to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
She's seen all the movies that I just mentioned. I showed her at least 3 or 4 of Harry Potter movies. So yeah.
Okay, did you read the books first or did you watch the movies first?
I watched the movies first. Well, so I watched so when I was younger, like Harry Potter was not something that technically was like mommy wasn't tripping too much about it. It would have been, it depends on the year, but like it wasn't like popular in the church, so I didn't really watch it. But ABC Family always played Harry Potter weekends
at Christmas.
So so one time I was like, all right, I'm gonna check it out. So I watched all first 3 movies and I thought it was great, but I didn't, my like conscience was like, oh no. Anyway, so I didn't finish the series and watch the last of them until like my sophomore year in college. And I was like, bro, I was watching it on the computer in a car on the way back to Atlanta from college. I was like, yo, this is intense.
For real.
But yeah.
Try being like a really grown adult, seriously being into these children's series and being like, wait, what? Like
exactly. And last year I read all the books and that was a whole different experience. I read by read I mean listened to on Audible or on YouTube. I found people who were reading. There's a whole community there, people who read the Harry Potter books. I found the voice I liked. There were voices I didn't like, and I loved it. I was crying like I
stand. Oh my god, Black nerds unite, first of all, and like anybody that is into any of this, like You just get me.
Yeah.
You just get me. Yeah.
I'm here for the ride. I'm just here for the ride.
I was definitely in college. I think when the movies started coming out. Yeah, I think I was. And watched all of the movies first. I think by the time I got to the fifth book, the fifth movie, that's when I was like, okay, when this is over, I'm going to read the books. And by then I was like super grown and I could afford the whole box set. And yeah, watched the last movie. And I think I started the books the next week. I did not stop reading them. Like I read them almost straight through every day, all day. And it got me back into reading. Like, no joke. For as problematic as J.K. Rowling is right now, I appreciate her because it definitely opened up a different thought process in my head about what I like to read and how I like to read. So it made me figure out that like I really only like series of books. So then it was like, okay, what are series that I'm interested in? So then my husband always loved when we would go on road trips to listen to Walter Mosley. He would get the audiobooks from the library. Yes, we are that old. And the whole box set of CDs. And if we were driving, Walter Mosley, Devil in a Blue Dress.
Oh, okay.
Or I can just look above me. Blonde Faith, Little Scarlet,
Is Devil in the
Fortunate
Blue Dress
Son
a movie that Denzel
Yes,
did?
with Denzel.
Oh, okay.
Easy Rollins is the character. Yeah.
Okay.
So reading all of those, reading Michael Conley, The Lincoln Lawyer. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah.
That's a
Okay,
movie,
so
right?
so all of those series, just any of the books that come in a series. So that's how I got on Divergent. I have not read Lord of the Rings or any of those types of books. Yeah, gag. I'm not. It's just there's something about a series where they're actually talking about diversity, or you can tell that like these people are going to be different, that I'm interested in. Stuff like a Hobbit, I know what that looks like and who those people are, and it kind of just doesn't make sense or apply to me in a way. I can't describe it or pinpoint exactly what it is, but it's just like there's no connection to that for me.
Exactly. I mean, I tried with The Hobbit. I tried to read The Hobbit like 3 and 4 times. And I honestly think it's funny. I think the writing in the intro of it is funny. I even tried to watch the movies and I'm just like, man, I want to like this. Like I'm a Black nerd. I feel like this is it's the Lord of the Rings. I should like this. I think I understand why people like it. I just don't personally like it.
Yeah. It's the same as like people who are into Star Wars. I was get it.
The same thing.
But Star Trek, I'm like, give me this all day, all damn day.
How is that?
Nichelle Nichols, and then Zoe Saldana. Okay. So seeing myself on the screen, basically,
there's a connection from that perspective,
and seeing like this whole diverse population of people and aliens and all these things, and they're always going out and in the search and in the name of science, but also in the name of like, we're just here to learn. But Star Wars is like everybody's Black, everybody's white. It's the same story over and over. They're gonna blow up the little starship. Okay. Like it's just the same story over and over. But Star Trek is like, how do we go beyond
I see
the hate?
What's interesting that you said all of them go collectively together and they're all different. Yeah. And that's the perspective that I have from the race. Like when you asked Tori, how did she define race? I love how you did, Tori, because it came from a positive perspective. And when I think about race, I think it's a made up construct to divide. And I'm wondering how we can collectively come back together in spite of what was intended, right? How can we come together like was it the Star Trek that you spoke of?
Yes.
Sylvia, how can we collectively come together? Because when you think about race, we all bleed the same red blood. You know, we all shit, we all drink, and we all cry, we all do these things, right? So then the only thing that's different is how we look, excuse me. And so we're going to dog each other out about how we look. Let's get past that and come together on something that's beautiful so we can live in harmony and live a vibrant life. That's me. I don't know. Maybe my head is in the freaking clouds. I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's in the clouds. I see you wanting to transcend and get past this moment. But I think, like I said at the beginning, we got to know where we're coming from in order to move forward. We have to know how, yes, it's a made up construct. And I feel like, on a sidebar, like everything is made up. Names are made up, words are made up, concepts are made up, colors are made up.
Yeah.
Everything that we see is made up. It's just a matter of how many people agreed to that thing that was made up.
Right.
And everybody agrees that like race is a thing. Now, there are a lot of people who are like you, who are like, is made up and we shouldn't go with it. But then there are a lot of people who are like, okay, fine, it's made up, but we need to use it for whatever the thing we need to use it for. And I think I'm kind of caught in the middle of the two of you, where on one hand, I'm like Tori, where I appreciate that there are different races, that there are differences in people, and that they are distinguishable. On the other hand, I'm like you, Lori, where I believe, yeah, I'm a human first. It's only a problem for someone else when they need to describe me, is when those things are brought up. And that's where I believe it's kind of problematic. In order for you to give me a home loan, I've got to check a box that fills your diversity numbers. Or if I was on the news, they're not just going to describe me as a 40-year-old woman from wherever I'm from. They're going to say a Black woman in Southwest Atlanta. You know, it's going to be very, very specific. I don't get to just be a person first.
Right.
Well,
right.
I think race by itself is one thing, but I kind of see race as kind of like a Q in the alphabet. It's not by itself. It comes with a U, and that U is culture. Like culture. Okay. So like what you look like is one thing. Yeah, we look like this, but you can say this person is 5'2", brown skin, and brown eyes, and then you can say this person is 5'2", white skin, and blue eyes. That by itself means nothing other than that's brown. Like it means nothing more than that's a brown person, that's a white person, and they're standing right there. But when you start to add like what the stereotypes, what this person might think like, what this person's experiences might be, the talents this person might have, the perspective on life this person might have. When you add that into it, that's when it starts to, for good and bad, divide. That's where the divide comes in. And we can look at it, if we take what we know of culture and what we have learned to be one's culture, like, and don't ask them questions about it, then that's where stereotypes become harmful. I don't think it's possible to live life without stereotypes. Like, we as humans are always trying to understand the patterns in life so we could get through with the least amount of discomfort. So we have to, it's a lot of people. We have to figure out a way to subdivide them in our minds to get used to it. But when we decide that because she is this and she could not be anything else, that is where it becomes an issue. I think we can have race, we can have culture, but we also have to have curiosity. If you take curiosity out and you put assumption in solely, you have issues.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And do you see that a lot now that you're living out of the country? Because I definitely saw that when I lived
I
out of the
see it in
country.
myself. I see it in myself.
Okay.
Because I have used patterns of people to help me figure out life, like to get through. And so I work with two white girls from Chicago, very different personalities. Um, both good, just very different personalities. Two white girls from Chicago, and a guy from India and a guy from the Philippines. So like all these different aspects of people there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like learning, like just in that little group, like what to expect. Like one of the girls from Chicago, we have had the like how we kind of have similar interests and experiences, and she quoted a movie that I love. She quoted it at a time that I would have quoted it if I had been saying what she was saying, or the opposite. She quoted the movie in a way I would have quoted the movie at a time. I was like, what is happening here? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think there are movies that are in general quotable, like a lot of people might. This wasn't one of them. And even if it was one of the movies, it wasn't the quote that everybody would know. And the fact that she did that, I was just we have a lot of similarities in my point. So I have like come to understand, like, one, wow, I haven't been around, like, I haven't had a white friend in a long time. Like
Yeah.
I did in high school. And so like in my mind, like I had a lot of white friends in high school in my mind, but they weren't my best friends. They were my friends. But like I now have close white friends, which I haven't had in a long time. I went to HBCU. So a good of my, like for the past 6 years, I've been surrounded by Black people,
Mm-hmm.
which very different types of Black people, Caribbean,
Right.
from everywhere, from
Yeah.
actually Africa, like from the United States. Different states have their different cultures, whatever. But I've been learning, I don't want to say my friends' names, but I've been learning them. Like
Mm-hmm.
not this white girl from Chicago, not this other white girl from Chicago, not this Indian guy, like what that means, like learning these aspects of them. Yeah, like they all paint a picture, but looking at the whole picture. And also that's just my coworkers. I'm in Spain and I have all these South Americans, people with me, Spaniards, Senegalians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you learning though? Because this is the thing. You've come from a place where all the people around you kind of look like you, and it's kind of like merged in a way you've used to them. They become your community. And now you're a fish out of water, and you had to adapt to a whole new way of being with people from all different walks of life. And you're finding that some of these people who don't necessarily look like you are so similar to you in a lot of ways. What do you think
But
you're getting from this whole thing? Because I think that's fantastic.
I am learning what I how I react outside of this. Like I considered myself a very open-minded, adaptable person, and I still do. But like just um so when it comes to the race, one of the things I've recognized by I'm like, there are some things that I have heard of being around, like going back to being in the States, being in one group, there's some things said that have become so common, or not common to me, but I kind of let slide in my mind. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with the comment, but I don't argue the comment. Well, sometimes I do, but I've gotten you like there's some things I let slide that I recognize that, hey, like in a more diverse like experience, that wouldn't be something I would want to be said around me.
Mm-hmm.
Um and to like give an example, um so I saw a post on Instagram, and it was about COVID, and it was like, hey, y'all don't want to get a vaccine in you because you don't know what's in it, but you'll put a white penis in you. I was like, wow. And I just kept scrolling. I mean, I did think, wow. And I kept scrolling. And then there's also like when I was coming to Spain, like people were like, oh, you're going to Spain? I'm like, yeah. And one of the people who I was talking to was like, yeah, you know what? You have fun out there. Just don't get with a white man, okay? And then there was one more that I had in my mind.
What's your response to that though?
In
Are
your
you
mind.
open to that? Are you like, yeah, I know better?
So for me, I'm like, no, I'm not open to it. To me, I'm like, you're talking as if these like not rhetorical, but these hypothetical white people that I might be interacting are not people. Like you're not treating them like people, or at least not treating them like good people. Like to say you don't want that penis in you is like, wow, you really made it sound dirty. Like to somebody who's an anti-vaxxer, like if you're comparing this vaccine that they don't want to like this like penis is basically, it was like a nasty ass penis, basically. That's what it is like making it sound like. And it's like, or the comment, just don't get with a white guy. Like, why? Like, what? Why? What is it that, like, you don't even know this guy that you're saying I should not get with. And then I know a friend of mine who like found like a pack of cocaine on the beach. Like we were on a beach and they found a pack of cocaine and they were like,
just out in the middle of nowhere.
Just out in the middle of nowhere. They were like, this is wild. So we're talking about it and they were like, yeah, this is wild. And then we were like, I was like, throw it away. And I don't know. We were talking about, we were talking about how we were happy that they were able to take that off the street. Like, I don't know whose it was, but we were able to take it off the street. And my mind can go like to the end of someone's story. So like, I was like, we just saved someone's life. Someone didn't get addicted to cocaine because they tried it that one time or whatever. So this person I was talking to was like, well, I wouldn't mind if it was a white person who found it. And I'm like, that's still somebody's life. Like,
I hear you. I kind of understand where people are coming from with this though, when they say these comments. And I get what you're saying about like, yes, they're human, they're a person. But in historical
I'm now around these people, like yes. I'm now like I have these friends who are quoting the same things I'm quoting. Like, this is a real person next to me. Like she has a real brother, and you're like, so these comments are not now is like, before it was just comments about these rhetorical people, or not rhetorical, but these metaphorical people or whatever. Hypothetical. I don't know why it's slipping me, but hypothetical people. Now is like, you're making these comments about my friends. So when people talk about your friends, you say something. Like if someone says something about your brother's penis, like, I don't want that in me. Like, I mean, my brother's a nice person. Like, don't diss him like that. Like, and so now these people are not foreign to me. Like my arm is not like they're not away from me. They're next to me. And now you're talking about my friends. And I'm like, can you consider what you're saying?
I get that. I think I kind of understand what people are saying when they make these comments, because the historical context behind the comments. I'm not saying that they're right. I'm not saying that they're wrong either. They are not talking about your friends in particular. They are talking about a broad spectrum of white people that they've had interactions with, that they've had problematic interactions with. So that's why I'm like, I kind of get what they're saying, because I've seen their examples, but I've also seen your examples where you've been in a situation and you meet a white person at work and you become fast friends, and now you are under the umbrella of not all white people. So I see where it's kind of like, oh, it kind of has a little bit of sting to it now, because you're like, but not my white people, not my white friends. They're not like that. They're not the problem, or they wouldn't do that, or they wouldn't be on cocaine, or, any of those things, or like, they're good people. I've been friends with them. For me, I had the same situation. I had I really, really, really watch I said this before, all the fundies, like the Duggars, the Bates, name one of those big families where they have like 27 kids and they live on like this big property of land and they beat the Bible to no end. And I used to watch all of their shows. And I was at work one day and a substitute teacher had a very interesting name. And that name was the same name as one of the Duggar children. And we were all sitting at the table. I was one of only a few Black people in my whole department, in the whole school, actually, as teachers. And the substitute came in and he said his name. And I said, is that your name? And he said, yeah. And I said, that's just like, and the white girl that was sitting across from me said, the Duggars. And it was just kind of how at the beginning, how the two of us were just talking about like Harry Potter and Game of Thrones. It was the same exact thing. It was the same kind of like quote situation where you're like, no one would know this unless you watch this. And we became fast friends. I mean, like deepest, darkest secrets, fast friends of like, you know, just, I thought we would be friends for a long time. And then the summer of 2020 happened and George Floyd happened. And I had left teaching and I'd started my writing career and I'd started being on podcasts and talking about race and talking about gentrification and talking about policing. And I started noticing that like my fast, hard friendship was withering. And I started noticing that like, oh, you don't agree with these things. Oh, you don't necessarily believe that this is a problem, that police are killing people. Oh, you don't necessarily think that we shouldn't be under these racist systems of oppression. Like we shouldn't be going through this. You don't have anything to say, but your quote unquote best friend is Black. And then it just became like, I have not heard from her since June 2nd of 2020, Blackout Tuesday.
Wow. So how you feel about that?
It hurt really bad at the beginning. And then I started losing more and more white friends. And then I started thinking, oh, allyship is not a thing. I started thinking about solidarity and thinking that solidarity has a time limit. You are hard and fast. We got to stop this. This isn't good. And oh, I have Black friends and I know how they are, and not all Black people and not all white people. And then when it becomes too uncomfortable, too difficult, or a bombardment, because I think everybody was on the same page on May 25th. And everybody's on the same page May 30th. And everybody was on the page May 31st. And then the next person was murdered on camera. And then June 2nd happened and everybody was like, we're going to put these Black squares on Instagram and we're going to be in solidarity. But we're not going to follow any of the instructions that was given about like what we're all going to do. And I just started seeing people wither. And I started seeing a lot of, especially white women over time, being like, oh, it's just really hard, or this is just overwhelming, or this is too much, or I just need a mental break. And I started feeling like, how dare you? I don't get a mental break. For as much as we say that we need to live in the moment and not worry about the past and not think about the past, I cannot take this shit off. I cannot stop being me. So I don't get a break. I can lighten the load by not thinking about it as much, but that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to attack me. That doesn't mean that I'm not still under some system of oppression.
Right.
And trying to explain that to people, I remember, okay, we lived in Abu Dhabi, so pretty much all the people that I met that were friends and made friends with didn't look like me. And that was fine. That was totally fine because we were all in this kind of hysterical, crazy situation. And when that happened, almost none of those people lived in America. So all of them were just looking at it from the outside. And I remember saying to a white Canadian British friend at the time that I was really scared for my husband because he had to go to work every day and he'd been stopped by the police around that time. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's just the scariest thing. And she kind of didn't say anything and no one else was saying anything. And then on the news was the 2 college students from the AUC who got their tires slashed and dragged out of the car and tased by the police, who, mind you, those police got off yesterday. They dropped all the charges.
What? The police slashed the tires?
Yeah, it was live on the news that night.
When did this happen?
Right around the protests, right around George Floyd protests, downtown Atlanta. It was right when the curfew was issued. The very first curfew was issued.
Okay.
And I remember sharing that video in our WhatsApp group. And I said, y'all, this is 15 minutes from my house. And it is, just the scariest thing that this is what the police are doing. Like, look, now you see it. It's not just Minneapolis. It's not just LA. It was like, this is Atlanta down the street from my house. And I remember the white Canadian British woman saying, well, you just have to stop thinking about it. It's never going to happen to you or your husband.
What?
And I lost it because I was like, how do you know? How sure are you?
What was her response?
She couldn't respond. There was nothing to respond. Like, how do you respond for saying something that stupid? And so again, it became like more and more people were like just distancing themselves a little bit more and a little bit more. And I get it. It probably was overwhelming that me, who I don't always talk about race, but I always was very aware who I was. And I've always been so proud to be Black. It had to be a shock to the system for me to become a writer about race, politics, policing, education, all those things when they were like, oh, you're one of the good ones, or that's not who you are, or whatever. And it's like, that's always been me.
That's so interesting because what it does is like, it helps people, you see them now. It's like, I didn't really see you, but
exactly.
Now I see you.
Exactly.
And you get to really see their actual perspective too. Yeah. Like, because that could have been a learning point for them, like opening their eyes to a and helping them see from a different perspective, also bringing empathy to the table. And some people just lack empathy. They cannot put themselves in someone else's shoes. It's so difficult, right? So kind of getting back to what Tori said about this person with it's like vaccines, like a white penis going in you, and hopefully you don't get with a white guy. I look at people, how their perspective is shaped, right? And Tori, your perspective, of course, might not be that, to where some people come from a place of hurt. They come from a place of anger, bitterness, and resentment, and then they group it all together and they make one race responsible for the hurt that they experience. And so while I'm listening to your both perspective, my perspective is, I don't even look at the race perspective as much as I look at the emotional perspective. These people who have the audacity to take a life or to be harmful or full of rage is coming from that place, right? And it doesn't matter what color you are, because you can be over in Rwanda, or you can be over in Iraq, or you can be in Ukraine or Russia. These white people are hurting white people, right? In Africa, you got Black people hurting Black people. People hurt people. We all hurt because we're hurting. But if you're loving, then you love. And I think that's the issue that we deal with more so than race, period. It's this place of harm, is hurt. And when we are hurting, all we can do is hurt.
Do you think that Tori's perspective of the Q and the U come in though? I think like you really have to hone in on the cultural part in that aspect. At that point, if you're going to take race out, you have to insert the culture. And for me, I would almost say that culture is more important to me than race.
Okay.
And
How so?
Okay, so I did a lot of writing and research on gentrification and getting to the heart of what really happens when a neighborhood is gentrified. Because it goes beyond people being pushed out of their neighborhood for the sake of like a Whole Foods is coming in now. It goes to the heart of you've spent decades devaluing a neighborhood based on a particular set of criteria, race being one of them.
Right.
But in that devaluing, the people in that area have built a culture that will withstand anything.
Right.
When those people are pushed out, that culture is damaged, destroyed, and removed. That goes to the heart to me of what gentrification really does. Is that it doesn't just push out people, it rips apart something that should be able to withstand anything, and that's culture. It is extremely difficult to live in a place where you know the people, the place, and the things are so beautiful. And you know they've been intentionally devalued. Southwest Atlanta has been intentionally devalued. Everything on Bankhead Highway has been intentionally devalued. And now you see white women walking with their strollers because now it's safe. It was safe in the first place. You see white men skateboarding, them in their little bike groups. Now it's perfectly fine because you have settled this area, or you have deemed that is okay to come over here. No, keep that same energy you had before and leave those people with their culture over there. But what you have to do is acknowledge that that culture existed. Acknowledge that it had value.
Right.
Just because you didn't know about it or you were afraid of it doesn't mean that it was bad or that it didn't have value.
But what was the thing that kept that from happening, Sylvia?
Harm and fear.
That's what I'm speaking of. And when you have this level of superiority in your mindset that you are better than someone else, that's what you do, or they don't matter. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to get. And so then from the person who is marginalized or devalued, how do they shift? Because if you're devalued, there's a feeling of I'm being devalued, right? And I'm speaking of there's a change in the mindset that has to occur. So these things won't happen.
On both sides, though, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, we have to cut this right here and come back for a part 2 because sheesh, like we've said a lot. What do y'all think? Part 2?
Yeah, I think we need to do that.
Part 2.
Each week, we ask you to tell us what's been better for you or what you think about the show. Before we go, here's a message we recently received.
Another episode of What's Been Better. Fire. I appreciate the advice from Sly and Miss Lori. This is a podcast that I started listening to, and it's done tremendous work. Thank you for your ladies for your guys' time and y'all service. This is C Good. Peace.
All right, everyone. We'll catch you next week with part 2. Thanks for listening.
That's it for this week's show. I'm Lori Scott.
And I'm Sylvia Johnson. And you've been listening to What's Been Better.
A big thank you to Lagon Music, Inc. for providing our music. This show is edited and produced by us with a little help from our family and friends. We love you all.
We want to hear what's been better for you this week. So send us a voice message or an email to questions@whatsbeenbetter.com. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at What's Been Better Podcast.
Thanks for listening.